Hello, everyone. This is Imran Amed, founder and CEO of the Business of Fashion. Welcome to a very special edition of BOF Live. We decided to hold an event for all of the business students and MBAs all around the world, as so many of you were contacting us and asking questions and looking for an opportunity to engage. And so we thought, given the power of the technology that we've all become so reliant upon over the last few months, it would make sense to connect with all of you at the same time. I'm really excited that we have MBAs and business students from around the world who are joining us today. And so this is generally quite an open question and answer session, but before I open it up to questions, I just thought I would just share some opening thoughts with you about the state of the world. And clearly, this is a really unusual and extremely challenging moment in the world. It started with a deadly virus, and which has developed into a pandemic, which has created a global health crisis, and hundreds of thousands of people have now died. And then that evolved into an economic crisis, with millions and millions of people now out of work all around the world, disproportionately, by the way, impacting the most vulnerable people in our societies. And then more recently, over the last 10 days or so, there's been a whole new conversation that's layered onto the existing economic and public health crisis around social justice and racial equity. And everything that's happening is all being played out, all on our phones and televisions. And it's really hard to take everything in at the moment. And I can appreciate that as business students or recent graduates, this presents a very challenging opportunity in which to be graduating or looking for a job or planning your career. But before we get started with the questions, one of the things I'd say is that it's absolutely essential to think about this also, leaving aside the really tragic, stories of, George Floyd and the pandemic and, millions of people unemployed. When times like this happen in the world, when there's so much friction and change, that's when real innovation and opportunities present themselves. And so while it's a very difficult moment, and I'm sure very challenging for all of you, I also believe that with the right mindset and the right instincts around what your purpose and passion in life is and how you're going to turn that into a career, I think that's a very important and in kind of dialogue to have with yourself at this time, is to understand, okay, well, what does this mean for me? What is the opportunity here? What is the opportunity here for me? So with that said, what I'd love to do now, we have about 45 minutes or so to have an open conversation. Hundreds of you submitted questions, but I think we have our first question today, which is going to come from Vanessa Barros in London. So waiting for Vanessa. Just waiting for Vanessa. Is Vanessa, just checking with our team. Oh, there's Vanessa.
Hey, I'm here. Sorry, I kind of lost my connection, but I'm here.
That's okay. Where are you today, Vanessa?
I'm in London, actually.
Okay.
Finishing classes now. I'm currently studying at LBS. So finishing the academic semester. So next week, I start my summer internship.
Okay, wow. And where will you be doing your internship?
At Nike, at the European headquarters in Hilversum. So
wow.
I'm really excited. Yeah.
Congratulations. So what's your question today?
So first of all, thank you so much for taking your time and talking to all of us. I truly admire your work and the work BOF does. My question is related to your transition from consulting to the fashion world. I think a lot of us has a consulting background or think about going to consulting. If you could please walk us through how was that transition to you? What were the main challenges, and maybe like give us some tips, please?
Sure. Well, it was a long time ago now, so I have to go back into my head. All I can remember for sure, Vanessa, is that it was extremely challenging. I mean, almost, the first part of my career, I thought I was building this CV that was going to help open doors for me. But when it came to fashion, those same schools and companies that I'd worked at that I thought would open doors, it actually closed doors. I had so many informational meetings with people coming out of business school, and more than once, over and over again, they said the industry doesn't need anyone like you. We don't hire MBAs. We're not interested in consultants. We are looking for X, Y, Z. And, just having the, in a way, just having the fortitude to be able to have a lot of people say no to you is going to be really important if you're making any kind of career switch, let alone a switch into an industry which is so hard to break into and which can be so exclusive and impenetrable at times. I'm happy to say that over the last 10 years or so, things have actually changed a lot. The fashion industry is much more professionalized now as a business. Companies like McKinsey and Bain and BCG are all doing work with fashion organizations and fashion companies. So the avenues and the understanding of what like a former management consultant could bring to a company, I think is much more evident. But the original challenge is still there, which is you really need to have a very good understanding of the entire value chain of the fashion industry, where the disruptions are happening, and what that means for your potential place in addressing some of those disruptions. And that really relies on you to know what your own unique skills are. And by the way, I'm not only talking about your business skills, I'm talking about your entire self. And so when I was having conversations with people in the fashion industry, I explained to them that, yes, I have this 8 years of management consulting and an MBA and an undergraduate degree in business, but I spent most of my growing up years in the creative arts, in the performing arts on stage. And I've always had a really creative energy about me. I just had to put it aside for a long time. And that's one of the reasons I left McKinsey in the first place, is I wanted to find a way of connecting those dots together. So I guess in summary, don't give up, because a lot of people are going to tell you no, no, no. Secondly, understand the value chain in fashion where disruption is happening and figure out how that can match your own skills. And third, don't forget about your other skills outside business that you can bring to bear in an industry with like fashion, which isn't just about business. It's about the full picture, right brain and left brain.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for your question, Vanessa. Okay. Our next question is coming from Miriam. So let's wait for Miriam to start a question. Hi, Miriam. We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you great now. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay, thanks.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for doing this.
I'm so delighted you were able to join.
So I'm an MBA student at North Carolina State University, which is located in the southeast part of the United States. In the last couple of weeks, a lot of racist and offensive viewpoints have been surfacing and resurfacing on social media. I've seen this affect the MBA program that I'm enrolled in. It's a predominantly white institution with about 40 students, very small program. So my question for you, Imran, is what advice or words of encouragement do you have for me and other Black and Brown business students at predominantly white institutions who are second guessed not taken seriously as future business leaders, and do not see people who look like them in the faculty and professorship that is offered at the university level?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for your question, especially in light of everything that's happening right now in the world. That's a really important question. I'm going to tell you a personal story about what happened to me when I was at HBS doing my MBA. And I'm Muslim.
Yeah,
and
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. And I was at HBS when 9/11 happened. And, you know, I had this, before I got to HBS, I had this impression of HBS being the kind of paragon of higher education in business, where people came from all around the world, where people were highly educated and worldly and informed people. And I'm afraid I have to say that, you know, it's not just smaller universities like North Carolina State where you'll encounter ignorance in the world. I encountered in that period post 9/11 some of the most Islamophobic, racist comments I've ever encountered in my entire life. And the one thing I learned during that period, Miriam, is that when you're in a community like that, when you are going to be a leader of the future, it's your responsibility to speak up. And so there was one classroom setting where a bunch of people were having a conversation about Islam and how, I mean, I'm not even going to repeat some of the things that were said. They were just unconscionable things being said about, you know, my culture and religion in a classroom at business school where I'm paying to attend class. And people were making these comments and I was so upset, I just walked out of the class. And then I was in the hallway afterwards and I remembered that it was my responsibility to educate people. And I know it can be tiring and exhausting to constantly have to educate people. But as leaders, leadership is not easy, especially if you come from a minority group, especially if you've faced challenges in your life that other people won't ever really be able to understand. And so I took that moment, I walked back into that classroom, everyone's hands went down, and I spoke for 10 minutes about what Islam really is. You know, and what, even as a non-actively practicing Muslim, it's such a big part of my identity as a human being that it was such an attack for people to say the things that they were saying, even in the heat just after 9/11, which was a terrible global incident. It was important to speak up, and, you know, everyone paused and then they clapped. And for the rest of the day, I got messages of support from all around the community. So what I'm saying to you through this story that I'm sharing is that when you encounter that kind of stuff, so, you know, speak up to it, vocalize it, use your intellect and your education and your opportunity to help other people become more informed, because ignorance is all around us. And if we, as educated people who have these opportunities to be in these spaces, that these mostly white spaces, if we don't use those privileged opportunities to speak up, then who's going to? You know, who's going to? So that's my message for you. I know that's not easy, and I'm sorry that, you know, I know the last few weeks have been really painful, and I'm sorry. I empathize with the pain that you've been feeling, but I also encourage you to find a way of channeling that into something where you can take your experience, take your perspective, and share it with others.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Miriam. Bye. Okay. Our next question is from Eki. So I'm waiting for Eki to join. Hopefully Eki joins soon. There she is. I can't hear you, Eki. Are you on mute? We cannot hear you. Don't worry. It's fine. What I recommend is you type your question into the chat box, and I will, if you type your question into the chat box, I'll read it out, but you stay on the screen. Okay, I think I have your question actually. What will fashion consumer behavior become post-traumatic 2020? What will define luxury post-2020? Is that correct? Eki, can you hear me? Okay, I don't know if Eki can hear me either. But let me begin by answering her question, because I think this is something that we've been exploring a lot at BOF, is like, how is consumer behavior going to change after all of this? I think it's going to change a lot. I think we're in a space right now where people have been forced to stay at home for extended periods of time, not engaging with other people in person, and finding that they have to use tools and technologies and workarounds and hacks to do the things that they want to do to keep themselves engaged and happy. And so what I'm advising is for you to think about, well, how has your behavior changed? Like, how have your colleagues and your friends at business school or elsewhere, how have their behavior changed? Because I think a lot of this is actually everyone's going kind of through a very similar experience, and you in a way could be your own focus group. But I think, you know, a lot of people who've been using e-commerce, if you can imagine, for the first time, either to buy their groceries or do other things, you know, those people aren't going to stop using e-commerce now. All of the interaction that we see via Zoom and other video platforms, that means that, you know, those are new ways to engage with customers too, because the barriers have been broken down. Many of you will have noticed that, you know, whenever anyone sets up a call now, it's gone from being a default audio call to a default video call. So all of these things mean that that you have a very, very different set of behavior where, as it pertains to technology. And then I think the other place where I think consumers have been spending a lot of time thinking is around consumption. And we call them consumers, and that means consumption. But people are really double, you know, second guessing or like thinking again about, what do I really need? Why do I need to buy it? Perhaps my pay has been cut. Perhaps I've lost my job, or perhaps someone in my family has lost my job. And there's so many new challenges that people are facing just sheerly on an economic basis that mean that actually, you know, people might just not have the same, you know, disposable income as they used to before all of this happened. So I think consumer behavior is changing on multiple levels. It's changing with regards to technology. It's changing with regards to like the idea of overconsumption, and it's just changing with regards to sheer economics. And so, Eki, I'm sorry we never got to hear your voice. Hopefully you can hear me now. And okay, well, I'm sorry we can't hear you, but thank you for your question. You're in Vancouver, I can see, I hear. That's where my family lives. So I'm glad you're staying safe, because you know, they've managed the epidemic very, very well over in Vancouver. But thank you for your question. Our next question today is going to come from Pamela. So let's just get Pamela online.
Hello.
Hello, Pamela. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you so much.
Where in the world are you today?
In Chartres. It's a medieval city. It's close to Paris. It's like 1 hour from Paris.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I've never been to Chartres, but I will make an effort to get it on my agenda when we're allowed to travel. Pamela, are you at business school right now?
No, I finished my MBA in luxury brand management at the Grenoble School of Management.
Okay.
I finished my thesis, and now I'm waiting for, you know, the grade.
Okay, so you just finished.
Yes, I will be graduating in July.
Okay, well, congratulations. What's your question today?
Yeah, my question is, do you think businesses will be reluctant to hire MBAs? Because, we have a certain profile and some companies said they are going to hire next year in 2021. So what is the situation for us? And maybe do you have some tips?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I also graduated into a crisis. I graduated just after the dot-com bubble burst and right after September 11th happened. And so all of the job opportunities dried up. Many of my classmates who had job offers, those job offers were rescinded. Other people couldn't find jobs for a very long time, but eventually everyone got a job. And so I think the situation this time, it might take a bit even longer this time, but I think if you have skills in demand, they will be of use to a company at some point in the future, just not as quickly as you thought. And I think the question is how you spend the time now between, looking for a job and actually getting a job, and how you keep your mind occupied. And I encourage you to keep learning and keep, immersing yourself in different things just to keep your mind engaged. But also, for those of you who are, when I graduated from business school, I was like, I never want to be a management consultant again. And then that was the only job I could get. And so I had to give up on even back then, I wanted to work in the fashion industry. It was absolutely impossible. Nobody was hiring. And so I had to make a compromise, which was, okay, I'm going to go back into management consulting for a few years. And that's naturally where I was able to get a job because I'd done the job before and I knew how to do the job. Yeah. And so I think sometimes in these kinds of situations, you have to go back to what you already know. I know a lot of people go to business school with a view of making a career pivot, but trying to make a big career pivot in the middle of the crisis is challenging. So you might need to go back to your previous line of work for a short period of time and then think about your next step.
Wow, thank you so much.
No problem. I hope that helps.
Yes, it's helping. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. Our next question is coming from Audrey. And Audrey is going to be getting in touch with us from Philadelphia today.
Hi, Imran.
Hi, Audrey. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are things in Philly? What do you do in Philly?
I recently graduated from the Wharton School, and I'm just getting ready for pivoting into fashion. Actually, I was a consultant before, but I'm moving to fashion.
Oh, really? Where are you going?
I'm going to work at Tory Burch.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited.
That's great. So how can I help you today? What's your question?
Yeah, so my question is actually related to what specific areas of fashion business do you think that business school students can add value? And you mentioned looking into disruptions along the value chain before, but can you give us maybe a couple of examples of what specific disruptions?
Yeah, I mean, Audrey, where are you originally from?
China. I grew up in Shanghai.
Okay. Yeah, so it turns out one of my answers to this is China. Just because the opportunity and market growth in China, even post-pandemic, is going to continue to be the most important growth opportunity for our industry. And anyone who has, firsthand expertise in the Chinese business landscape, who speaks the Chinese language, and who can offer perspectives on that market more generally, is a highly, highly valued resource. The other place where a lot of innovation and growth is happening is obviously anything related to digital. So, it's surprising, but there are still some companies out there fashion companies out there that don't even do e-commerce. they're still trying to understand how to engage with communities in the social space. They're still trying to figure out how to integrate their physical stores with digital customer journeys. And so the other place where I see a lot of opportunity is anything having to do with digital, because that's where so much of the innovation is going to happen. And if you can intersect those two things, digital and China, then that's like the holy grail. That's like the intersection of where a lot of innovation is happening. So I would advise people who have expertise or interest in those areas to look at that. The one other area where I think business students, highly analytical people, can be really valuable in a fashion company is in merchandising. And merchandising is actually both a left brain and a right brain thing. There's a lot of data, number crunching, and it's a really interesting role because it kind of sits in between retail, design, and manufacturing. And you're kind of this hub in the middle. So that's an area where I think business students could play a pretty unique role.
Thank you so much. It's really helpful.
No problem. And congrats on your job. And
Thank you.
Congrats on your graduation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, our next question is Sophia. And I believe Sophia is joining us from Athens, Greece today. Hi, Sophia.
Hiya.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
And what are you from Greece? Are you taking refuge in Greece? Are you quarantining in Greece? What's going on in Greece?
It's a little bit of both. I'm Greek American, and I grew up both half my life in the US and half my life in Greece. And my parents have been here since 2004. So came back to enjoy a little bit of sun, but also quarantine.
Okay, and where are you studying?
I'm at London Business School with Vanessa.
Oh, great. Okay, wonderful. 2 LBS students. How can I help? What's on your mind?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I want to go to business school is really to better understand like the sustainability landscape within luxury. And clearly the industry has been going through like this crash course in survival. But where do you think companies will continue to prioritize sustainability going through this? And what do you think that could potentially look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly true that in a time of crisis, it can be tempting or maybe even necessary to dial back on some of your other goals as a business leader, especially if you don't see them as being directly linked to your business success. But I'm afraid with sustainability, it's so intertwined with success in fashion now that I think anyone who's thinking of slowing things down is only going to do themselves a disservice. And there's a number of reasons I feel that way. One, and probably most importantly, the climate crisis has not gone away. I mean, emissions have fallen because no one's traveling and, no one's going on airplanes and people aren't driving cars. But when the, economies and cities and, regions around the world actually start opening up properly, all of that pollution and travel is going to return. And so I know we've been having blue skies here in London for many, many weeks now, but, the reason I raise this is because this temporary dip in emissions, even if I read somewhere that there's going to be an 8% cut in emissions overall this year. We would need an 8% cut in emissions every year for the next decade to achieve the sustainability goals from the United Nations. So that's not happening. So what does that mean? That means business needs to find a way of operating within this new context. And that impetus for companies to think really carefully about their footprint is probably more important than ever, because as everyone's been sitting at home over these past few weeks, as I was just discussing with one of the other questions that came earlier, there's been a lot more reflection that people are having about, like, why do I have all this stuff? Do I need all these clothes? Why am I buying more, stuff basically over and over? And I think people are just going to be, from a consumer behavior standpoint, one, a lot more reflective and thoughtful about what they consume, and two, the culture that's really developing in terms of how communities online call companies to account, I think that's going to continue to happen in sustainability. Customers are looking for this now. And so businesses, fashion businesses in particular, need to listen. So that's my perspective.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, our next question is also from London, or for someone from London, though Sophia was based in London, now in Athens. And I feel like I might massacre this name, but I'm going to say, is it Blagovesta in London? Let's see if I've pronounced it correctly. Blagovesta will be able to tell me. So still waiting for Blagovesta. Sorry for the little delay. I think we'll hear from her very shortly. Okay, so Blagovesta is not able to join, but her question was, what is the most important thing to be a successful entrepreneur? Well, that question I could answer on so many different levels. First of all, it takes resilience. I mentioned earlier that early in my journey of becoming an entrepreneur and setting up BOF and all of that, I heard no over and over again. And that's something that's continued in my entrepreneurial journey. Everyone is going to tell you no. There's going to be so many barriers that are put in front of you. There's so many challenges that you're faced with that you constantly have to kind of pick yourself up and say, okay, I'm going to keep going. No matter what happens, no matter how hard the day was, no matter what challenge I faced, no matter what obstacle has been put in my way, I'm going to find a way of getting through this. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I really think in order to have that resilience and that ability to keep going, you need a really strong sense of purpose. And so when you're thinking about a business that you want to launch, some people will think of a business idea in an area that they just don't care about, and it'll be really successful, and they'll work, their butts off for a very long period of time, and they'll go make a lot of money, but they might leave that experience not having a real sense of like personal fulfillment from it. What I've always felt is that if you can have like a really strong sense of purpose in the work that you do, and that's connected to the enterprise that you set up, then that gives you the energy to continue even when things are really challenging. It gives you a real focal point to think about when you're composing your strategy. It gives you a really clear message when you're trying to hire team members or raise money. Like having that purpose and having clarity about that purpose is so important. And then the final thing that I'd say on this point is that you just have to be comfortable with ambiguity. I mean, before I was an entrepreneur, I was on this like very, predictable, path in the management consulting industry where you kind of knew exactly what job you would be doing for the next 2 years. And every, 18 months to 2 years, you'd get a promotion, you'd be the next job. And you could kind of like project your whole way into the future by looking at what like a partner at your firm did every day and how they operated and how much they worked and what the nature of their work was like. And so, for some people, that's really comforting to have that really defined career path. I think for people who want to be entrepreneurs, there's no path. Like there's no plan. Like you can't really predict what's going to happen 6 months from now. Like 6 months ago, all of us at BOF, and I consider all of us entrepreneurs because, we're all running the company and we're all building this scale up company together. I mean, we had no idea this pandemic was going to happen, just like everyone else. And like, as a business, we've had to come to terms with like, well, how do we operate in this new setting? And events like the one we're doing today, we weren't even doing them before. So you just have to be comfortable with the ambiguity of not knowing always what's going to happen. And it's not for everyone, frankly. But I find it really rewarding. Our next question is going to be Olivia from Dallas, Texas, USA. So let's get Olivia up here.
Hi.
Hi, Olivia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What are you up to in Texas?
Not much.
No?
It's just really, really warm here. And yeah, just not much going on still. So yeah, thank you so much for doing these. I watch almost every day. This is really what I do.
Oh, amazing. I'm glad to hear that. So what's your question today?
So yeah, my question today. So I am an apparel merchandising major at Auburn, but I have a business minor as well. And so my question was, what do you think the benefits are for having both of those, graduating with those 2 degrees?
Mhm.
Is it like a really common thing now that you're seeing for fashion students to also have a business minor, or do you think it's kind of like a step up for them?
I think it's very unusual, and I do think it can be a real asset. If you think of your fashion education as your creative right brain, and if you think of your business education as your analytical left brain, obviously that's, it's not 100% true in either case. Um, being successful in this industry, ultimately it boils down to both of those things together, especially if you're involved on the business side. So a business person has to have a really strong understanding of the creative process, of creative mindsets, of what's happening in culture, all of those things. But they also need to bring to the table the analytics and rigor of business. And, whether that's finance or accounting or strategy or marketing, there's analytical rigor in the way you think about these things. And for someone who has both of those things, that can present a really, really unique opportunity in the industry. So yeah, I absolutely do think that's a special combination of skills, and it's not one that I've seen very often, to be honest. Like, most people either have a business degree and they're trying to figure out the creative side, or they have a fashion degree and they're trying to figure out the business side. So congratulations that you have both.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for doing these, and I wish you the best with everything.
All right. And stay
Thank you.
safe
Good to
in
see you.
Texas.
Yes, you as well. In
All
London.
right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, so our final question today is from Beza. And excuse me if I've said that name wrong. And Beza is joining us from Turkey.
Hi,
Hi, Beza, how are you?
I'm fine. What about you?
I'm okay. Where are you in Turkey today?
I'm in Ankara.
Oh, okay. I've not been to Ankara. What's going on in Turkey right now with the pandemic and everything?
I think it's okay. It started turning okay. So yeah, we are doing good here.
Okay,
What about
great.
you? Where are you, by the way?
I'm in London.
Oh,
I'm in London.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I supposed to come to London, but it's canceled because of the coronavirus. So
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Everything's canceled. How can I help you today, Beza? What's your question?
Oh, Ima, actually, like I run my own business 7 months ago, but I never studied like fashion design or something. I'm just studying still business administration, and I'm generating some fashion brand, and I have an innovative idea, and that's why I applied for a patent like 4 months ago, and I think it's really a paradigm shifting idea, but the thing is that we are working on jackets first of all, and I'm not sure about like whether I need to show up in 1 month to sell jackets in that like crisis, because I don't think people are willing to purchase some jackets or not right now. So what?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I don't have any crystal ball. I'm sorry, Beza. If I had a crystal ball here and I could predict what was going to happen in the world, I think I could be doing something very different from what I'm doing now. I could help. But in general, I think the economic crisis that we're facing, I feel, and this is just one person's perspective, I feel this is a long crisis. It's going to be a deep crisis.
Yeah.
And industries like fashion, which are dependent on discretionary spending, are going to be hit very hard. And so a lot of the brands and independent designers I've been talking to, they're not being afraid to just pause right now. You know, you can actually do a lot of damage to your business if you try to keep running it on the in the same way you were before this was all happening, just to maintain the kind of outward impression that everything is okay. But that's not what you should be optimizing around right now. You should be optimizing around, where can I cut costs? Where can I save money right now so that I can be ready for the future? Because if you end up spending a bunch of money on stuff right now that doesn't transpire because there's no customers right now, or there's very few customers, you're going to end up getting into a more difficult situation down the road. So for small businesses in particular, I'm advising them to cut costs wherever possible, and if possible, even pause and just wait things out. That's not possible for everybody. That's a luxury. But that's my advice generally.
Actually, I did. And in that period, I'm trying to improve my business in terms of, cutting the cost and evaluating the idea and maybe like the design.
Yeah.
And I will appreciate if you want to hear about it more, because like I really want to get some feedbacks from the experienced people to maybe like pivot my business in the future, like before getting some damages. So
Sure.
how can I tell you more about it?
Okay, well, why don't you drop an email to ceo.office@businessofashion.com, and that'll get to me.
Can you spell it again?
Yeah, CEO.
Yeah.
.office.
.office. Yeah.
At businessofashion.com.
At businessofashion.com.
Okay. Just like our website.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
You so much. Thank you.
Okay. Daisy, it was very nice to meet you. Stay safe.
You
Okay.
too.
Bye. Bye. That's all the time we have for today, everybody. I hope those collective questions and answers were helpful to you. I feel really connected to all of you during this period, and we're going to continue doing more of these sessions in the coming weeks and months. So stay tuned and stay focused. I know it's really challenging times out there. I know it can be hard to make sense of everything that's going on. I really empathize with you because no one really understands everything. So keep reading BOF. If you don't have your free BOF professional membership, you can get one on the website. So make sure you check that out. We give free memberships to anyone who's a student at any university anywhere in the world. I'm really grateful that all of you joined, and I hope